A very good evening and a warm welcome to one and all present here. We have gathered today for the final day of the seminar series as a part of the ICOMOS training activity and capacity building program, a settlement study at Kudase village in collaboration with SMEF's Brick School of Architecture. My name is Ramya Raghavan and I will be your Master of Ceremonies for today. Before we proceed with today's program, let me briefly introduce the ICOMOS training activity and a small recap of the talks that we have had over the past few days. This training activity in collaboration with ICOMOS is in the form of a comprehensive program that aims to bring a holistic and a contextual engagement with local precincts, their biodiversity, the rich vernacular culture, and the built environment. The proposed activity is based on the settlement study titled Comprehensive Study of Heritage Settlements in the Western Ghats. The activity will involve participation from the second-year students of the SMEF's Brick School of Architecture, Pune, India, with the support of the West Zone National Scientific Committee on Historic Towns and Villages, Cultural Landscapes, Education and Training, and the EPWG. The study is split into 3 segments. The first part focuses on conversations around several relevant issues, namely the nature-culture journey, cultural landscapes, and settlements in the Western Ghats. This segment that was spread across 3 days, continuing to today, is a precursor that will offer a firm foundation of understanding broader concepts of natural heritage and settlements set in ecological contexts. This will be followed by fieldwork on site located at Kudase village near Tillari Conservation Reserve from the 6th to 10th of January. The concluding segment will involve compilation of the documentation through a publication that will tie the entire activity into a comprehensive resource. Over the past few days, we have had a series of insightful lectures on understanding the natural heritage, biodiversity, and its relationship with cultural landscapes. Today, we have with us experts from diverse areas of expertise who will take us through methods of documenting heritage, a component that is going to form the crux of the forthcoming activity. Without further ado, we kickstart today's session. Before we begin with the presentations, I take this opportunity to introduce architect Naveen Piplani, President of ICOMOS India. Naveen Piplani is a former Hamlin Fieldin Fellow and Director of Studies, Center for Conservation Studies, the University of York, UK. He runs an architecture conservation practice based out of New Delhi, India, and has worked as a core member of the multidisciplinary team for the conservation of Taj Mahal. He is the Vice President of ICOMOS International Training Committee and has served as an expert from India at the ICOMOS World Heritage Panel 2017-2018. Currently, he is engaged as a consultant at Intact Heritage Academy for training, research, and capacity building in the heritage sector. Architect Naveen has researched and published widely on conservation, education, and practice. He is involved with collaborative networks, professional organizations, and academic institutions engaging with heritage matters across the globe. Sir, we welcome you warmly and request you to address our students. Over to you, sir.
Good evening and welcome to all the students and faculty and participants on behalf of ICOMOS India, which I'm sure you know is the International Council on Monuments and Sites. And so ICOMOS is the larger umbrella body, and the National Committee of ICOMOS in India is called ICOMOS India. It has national committees in several countries. Over 10,000 members worldwide, and various countries expressed their interest to set up a national committee, and so has India done. The website is quite explanatory. You may go and look at the website and see what ICOMOS India does. Our primary objective is to work on and develop scientific programs, scientific research, scientific exploration in the heritage sector, build networks of people who are involved in the heritage sector, do training and capacity building, develop philosophy guidelines, also look at the gap areas, particularly with various kinds of risks that heritage properties have from both natural and man-made endeavors. Now, for this particular program, I'm quite happy and glad that the organizers, particularly the institution and our NSC coordinator, Niyati ji, has invited me to say a few words. You see, this thing of engaging with students and also faculty is very important at a very early stage, so that all of you get to know what cultural heritage is all about. I know there are some aspects that this program is going to deal with, including cultural landscapes and documentation, which are quite specialized domains. One can understand broadly what cultural landscape and documentation is, but really what we do at the college level and understanding these complex contexts is not an easy task. So I'm glad and happy that the school has taken it upon themselves and the students and the faculty to explore this aspect. There are various notions of cultural landscape. So even in the professional world, there is no consensus as yet on what particularly cultural landscape would mean, because it varies from country to country and within the country also. And we had a few months back a whole 2-day scientific symposium on understanding what a cultural landscape in an Indian context would look like or defined. So this is quite a useful exercise that you people have taken it upon yourselves. So first is the understanding of what cultural landscape or cultural setting or cultural heritage, cultural monument, cultural memory, cultural assets is. That itself is quite a, I would say, an enlightening position. And working with ICOMOS India will provide you a scientific basis. You know, we can get emotional about it, and we can get get hazy about these concepts, but it is really the strength of our members, ICOMOS India's members, that we guide you, we direct you to a more scientific, to a more logical, to a more grounded understanding of aspects related to heritage. Which leads me to the second aspect, which is documentation. So once you understand what the concept is, है ना, तो ये जानना जरूरी है कि हम बात क्या कर रहे हैं और उस बात का मतलब क्या है. ये जब आ जाएगा, meaning of that concept, then the documentation is not a standardized documentation that you just go to the site, take out your measuring tapes, and start measuring in feet and inches without understanding what is it that you are measuring. What is it that you want to get out of that documentation, which basically depends largely on the concept of cultural objects that you are looking at. In this case, a very vast landscape, perhaps, and buildings within that landscape. So this is a very interesting thing that that you people are doing with ICOMOS India, and I'm grateful to our West Zone rep, Poonam Trambadia, and all these other people who are involved, NSC people, Vaishali from our NSC training, and I may miss out on a few names, the principal of the institute, and students and faculty. I would just say that it's a hugely interesting opportunity for both ICOMOS India and the institute. It's a mutually learning process. Please make the best of it. If you do not understand certain things, don't take a backseat. Poke in the Facebook language, poke the speakers, poke the presenters, poke the trainers, and understand what is it all about that you are doing. in the field and in the post-field work, so that after finishing this training program, you must take pride in the fact that this joint collaborative workshop was hugely and immensely beneficial to all of you, and it was unique. The idea is that what you do with ECOMOS India is something that you don't do with any other organization, because we are a network of experts who bring scientific knowledge to the forefront. So, and that uniqueness should form the basis of this workshop. And each one of you after the workshop should feel proportionately, that much more knowledgeable and proud that if this workshop hadn't happened, my God, we would have missed out on such an interesting aspect or an important aspect of documentation, cultural landscape, cultural heritage, and etc. Because the people who are coming and going to be speaking to you are really marvels. They have spent their lives and professions working in these areas. So with these few words, I wish you all the best and hope that you would have immensely gained from this workshop. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your wonderful words of encouragement. We at BRIC are fortunate and deeply humbled that this collaboration with ICOMOS was made possible. It is now my privilege to introduce Dr. Purva Keskar, Principal, SMEF's BRIC School of Architecture. Dr. Purva Keskar is an architect, environment designer, quality manager, educator, and author of numerous articles on the practice of environment design and environment management. She is the director at VKE Environmental, a consultancy firm. Her practice has won the HUDCO National Award for Outstanding Green Rated Office Buildings and the ESA Award for her lead project for SKF bearings in the year 2015. She serves as a member on various boards and committees at national and local levels in the area of energy efficient buildings, green buildings, and sustainable urban planning. Dr. Purva has headed the Department of Environmental Planning and Architecture at Dr. B.N. College of Architecture till June 2012. She has also spearheaded the structuring of syllabus for Master's Program in Environment Architecture, Pune University. Currently, she heads the SMEF's BRIC School of Architecture at Pune. I welcome you, ma'am, and invite you to address the audience. Over to you, Purva, ma'am.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Yes, so taking forward what Piplani has been saying, that, I would like to really say that there is no greater wealth than wisdom, no greater poverty than ignorance, and no greater heritage than culture. And therefore, cultural heritage is one of the most important aspects which we need to conserve and try to understand how to take it forward. I don't know, but when we thought of, having this kind of a workshop for the second years, the question was, are the second years too young to understand? And we finally deliberated and decided that this is a right time to introduce them to these aspects, because these aspects are the basis on which they base their thinking. And then in the years to come in the architecture college, when they are trying to explore, ideas for design, ideas for, how to build in certain context, how do you respond to certain natural sites, how do you respond to projects which are already there and need adaptation, conservation. They are aware of these aspects of how one really responds to the cultural heritage and how one takes it ahead. So I'm really, happy for the second years that they are going to get immersed in these discussions, in these workshop that is going to happen when they actually go to the site and experience things, observe things. And probably this kind of learning goes deep down, and I'm sure they'll be able to not only respond to this workshop in this year, but it is a lifelong kind of an learning that they are going to get. It's a life skill, I would say, which they will carry forward in their thought. I'm really thankful to ICOMOS to collaborate with us for this project. All the curation which is done for the lectures or the guidance lectures that have been planned for the students are so very apt, because we have been doing settlement studies for the students of architecture right from the first year, second year, third year. And then how is this going to be different is what I am really excited to see. I'm sure that with all the guidance, this time's documentation is going to capture the intangibles as well as the tangibles. And I'm sure that students will work on the publication so that, ICOMOS finds it deemed fit to publish as one of the reports on the ICOMOS website. And best of luck to all of you. Thanks a lot, ICOMOS, all the people who are involved, and of course, my faculty, Vaidehi, who has really been spearheading this entire, initiative, and Vinita and all the design faculty who has been supportive regarding this initiative. Best of luck, second years, and I'm sure that you are going to come out with, I wouldn't say better architects, but better human beings altogether. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your encouraging words. I'm sure the students are greatly motivated with your words and will carry forth the enthusiasm till the end. So now we begin with today's presentations. Through the presentations, to inform all the students that you may type in your questions in the chat box as the presentations go ahead, and we will take them in a Q&A session in the end. So it is now my pleasure to introduce the first speaker of the day, Dr. Vaishali Latkar. Dr. Vaishali Prasad Latkar is an academician and practicing conservation architect based in Pune. Presently, she heads the Department of M.Arch in Architectural Conservation at the Sinhgad College of Architecture, Pune. She has completed her doctorate in architecture with a focus on built heritage of pilgrimage towns from Savitribai Phule Pune University. She is also a member of Board of Studies in Architecture at the SPPU. She is coordinating National Scientific Committee of Education and Training of ICOMOS India and is a member of International Scientific Committee CIF of ICOMOS. She is a member of the Executive Committee Intact Pune Chapter and has been awarded the Best Teacher Award for Humanities by MASA in 2021. She has been conducting training programs in heritage conservation as well as heritage awareness programs for various types of groups. Dr. Vaishali has written widely and presented in many national and international conferences. Dr. Vaishali today will be speaking on the topic, exploring methods of documenting tangible and intangible heritage. A warm welcome, ma'am, and I now hand it over to you to take over.
Thank you, Rama. Thank you, Brick College of Architecture, for initiating this program. Good evening, everyone. For past 2 or 3 days, everybody is talking about heritage, settlements, EPWG. So I thought that, as Purva Madam has rightly pointed out, that these are second-year students, and I wonder if the concept of cultural landscape is really, something that they could understand at this stage. So I am addressing this presentation in a way that we will try to have a look at notion of heritage, which is changing over the years. It is not the same. It has evolved from a monument to, let's say, cultural landscape today in the world. Then let us have a look at settlements, since we are going to do settlement documentation, and then we'll come to the documentation part of it. So, what is it that we call heritage? Heritage is something that we say that we inherit. So does that mean that everything that belongs to past become heritage? No. We say that, there could be a necklace handed over by my grandmother to me, and I say that this is my heritage. Or, Taj Mahal, as you are seeing on the slide, is considered as heritage. But what is it that makes it heritage? When I say the necklace is my heritage, I am attached to that because of my association with my grandmom. Or, Taj Mahal is considered as World Heritage Monument We'll come to that, what it means when we call it World Heritage. But this is something that we associate with some kind of importance or significance. In conservation, this is called as value. Just come here. I just stop my video for better connectivity.
Sure.
So when we say that something is heritage, we try to associate it with some kind of importance. That importance could be that the thing is visually pleasing, aesthetically pleasing, or there could be associations. As I pointed out, that the necklace belonged to my grandmom and she handed it over to me, or the sari, handed over from generation to generation. So there are values that we associate anything with, and that can be considered as heritage. Our law says that if you have to call something heritage, it has to be 100 years old. But over the years, the notion of heritage had changed, especially after Second World War, when there was a lot of destruction in Europe, and people felt that they are losing their identity. So when they reconstructed their cities or towns, they reconstructed it as it used to be in the past. Now this proves the desire to retain our identity. And then that actually triggered the movement of heritage conservation world over. And then we see that UNESCO is coming in picture, and then we have ICOMOS, and then we have got various charters. Still, that time, we were calling historic buildings as monuments, historic buildings as heritage. Now, after this, sorry, is this me? Now, after this, people started feeling that the areas we are living in, which demonstrate a different kind of character, where people are still using those spaces, is also a type of heritage termed as living heritage. The buildings that are being used is also considered as heritage. And then that brings in lot of built environment under the umbrella of heritage. What you see in this picture is that from Taj Mahal, now we are thinking that those lanes where you get some unique character, architectural character, is also considered as heritage. It's still further evolved. When we apply 100 years criteria for calling it heritage, we realize that we still have something which is very important or significant for us, and that is not 100 years old. Next year, you will be studying contemporary architecture.
Did we lose?
Sorry?
I think we lost ma'am for a bit.
Am I audible now?
Yes, you are audible now.
Okay. So in contemporary architecture, you will be studying history of modernism, and then there are modern masters like Le Corbusier, Frank Lloyd Wright, and now structures designed by them, many of the structures designed by them is also considered as heritage. So from Taj Mahal to a lane, which is a kind of colonial road streetscape or indigenous streetscape, or here you are seeing Ruby House by Frank Lloyd Wright, which is also a World Heritage Site. How the concept or notion of heritage has evolved from something that belongs to past or to something that is more significant to us. Recently, this is an area in Mumbai which is called Victorian and Art Deco Ensemble of Mumbai. This was accorded World Heritage status. Now, what this World Heritage status means? When I said that necklace is important for me, it was important to me as an individual. When being in Pune, when I talk about Shanwarwada is important to Puneites because it belongs to Pune, or it gives Pune an identity. So somewhere we have got heritage, which is so extraordinary that it may not be considered as a hegemony, or it is not considered as something that belongs to a particular community, whereas it is considered as if it belongs to the whole world. And this is called as World Heritage. So, we have got pyramids, we have got many sites that are considered as not only heritage of that particular country or particular community, but it is the heritage of the whole world. So this is an Art Deco ensemble. Art Deco is a style of architecture that flourished briefly between 1920s to 30s in India. Especially we come across these areas in Mumbai or colonial towns. Then the first World Heritage City of India, living heritage city of India, is Ahmedabad, that got World Heritage status sometime back. And recently, I'm sure that you are all aware of this. This is Jaipur from Rajasthan. This is also declared as World Heritage City in 2019. Now, when we say Jaipur, what comes to our mind is not only Hawa Mahal or the Pink City. We also think about colorful puppets, bandhani, then bangles, razai. So, what constitutes identity of Jaipur is not only the built part, but also something that is created by humans or the communities. So this is like a body and a soul. The physical remains of any city constitute body, whereas the living part is constituted, or the life or the soul of that city is constituted by the inhabitants. Now, when any particular structure or monument is granted World Heritage status, you will have to spell out why you are calling it World Heritage status. This is called universal outstanding value. I told you about values. The heritage is about values. So when Jaipur is described, why it should be considered as World Heritage City, look at how it is described. It says that Jaipur is an expression of the astronomical skills and living traditions. You are all aware of Jantar Mantar, that is in Jaipur. Then it said that Jaipur is an exemplary development in town planning and architecture. In India particularly, we come across towns which are organically evolving. They grow on their own. But there are very few which were planned, and Jaipur falls in that category in medieval times. Then it shows the interchange of ancient Hindu, Mughal, and contemporary Western ideas in its planning. Then it identifies the built heritage in the form of buildings, palaces, havelis, temples, and gardens, neighborhoods designated for particular caste and occupations. And in the end, it identifies the different traditional industries. Now, out of this, the built part is something that you can see. So this becomes a part of tangible heritage, whereas, these karkhanas or the occupations which are carried over from generation to generation is considered as intangible heritage, because this is something that you cannot really feel or touch. You cannot really, it has to be practiced. So being architect, we tend to look at built heritage more, but we have to remember one thing, that when we say heritage, it has got two components, like body and soul. So when we are looking at settlement also functions as one entity in itself, which is also composed of different types of heritage buildings. So settlement has to be looked at two levels. One, it is like, Indian scholars say that it is like the concept of dualism in Hindu philosophy, Atman and Brahman kind of thing. So, the things function individually as well as they function in a group. And when they function in a group, it becomes a settlement kind of thing, which is made, or the life is put into this is by the cultural aspects, by communities, by traditions, by rituals, by festivals, by traditional occupations. And then when we are trying to study settlements, how do we really, when we are trying to understand what the settlement is about, settlement as heritage, why we are talking about heritage in settlement? The answer is settlements, as you know, that there are very few settlements that are completely planned new, like we have got Chandigarh. But in most of the settlements, these settlements have been growing over the time since ancient times. So you are bound to get a lot of heritage, whether it is tangible or intangible, as part of settlement. That is why when we are talking about understanding settlements, we have to look at the heritage of the settlement. And how do we do that? We gather information, we do analysis, and then we try to make sense of whatever we have gathered. Now, this process of gathering and compiling information is documentation. There are enormous ways by which you can gather information. But before we go ahead, what we have to understand, in Indian context, there are different historic settlements. Some settlements have grown over the time because they were nearer to the water sources, which is the life of human beings. Some settlements grew because those settlements were on the trade routes, so they were at the convenient location. So there were different factors responsible for the development of town. Like you all must have heard about Meenakshipuram. Now this is a temple town. The whole town grew because of this temple. So there are administrative towns, there are religious towns. Then in rural India, we come across scattered settlements. And then we keep hearing about two terms with respect to settlements, which is one vernacular settlement and traditional settlement. So we need to understand what is the difference between the traditional settlement and a vernacular settlement. What you see here is a streetscape from a place called Yeola. Yeola is famous for Paithani, which is a traditional weave of Maharashtra. And what you see here are the houses of rich people of medieval times. Now, how these houses are built in that time or in that period? There were different communities involved in building a house also. Though owner decided how big house he needed, it is always different types of communities that helped him. Communities in the sense, lime was used. So there was a community who was involved in lime making. Then there were carpenter community. Then, so there were different communities. This whole thing, the whole exercise was carried out as if a teamwork, where expertise of different communities were used and the houses got built. And you can see that in the way these are decorated. You can see it in the craftsmanship in wood. I'm not showing you the interiors, but it comes in the form of paintings. It comes in the form of stucco work, which is a kind of decorative lime work. So, but this is before Industrial Revolution happened. After Industrial Revolution, lot of industrial components started coming in building industry. So these kind of settlements, also in settlement, you will come across different neighborhoods meant for different communities. And these are called traditional settlements. Whereas vernacular settlements, what are vernacular settlements? You see that the houses are built directly in response to the climate and the surroundings. And who are the builders? The owners of the builders. So individual house is built by the one who is occupying it. And you can see that not everyone is good at carpentry, not everyone is good at, they will have that kind of skills. So that gets reflected in the way buildings are built. Also, you will have to look at the way things are planned. Now here is a vernacular house from a place called Kotimbe near Mumbai. This is a tribal area. And look at how things are planned. You can see that there is one big storage in the veranda near the door. Now, this is meant for storing grains. You can see on the right hand side, there is a kind of ladder kind of thing that is going up somewhere. So here, the concept of family included cattle or goats that they are domesticating. And they are given place in the house itself. That is the culture of that community. So you see that it gets reflected in the way houses are built. This becomes vernacular settlement. Why I specifically told you this difference, because the settlement you will be visiting is most likely going to be a vernacular settlement than traditional one. Now, traditional settlements are more urban in their expression. So, when we are trying to understand settlement, what are we trying to do? We are trying to understand the response to natural setting, how this settlement has come up, what have they done to combat climate, and how it is functioning as one unit. Why are we doing documentation? We are trying to create an archive which can be used further. I believe that the term called traditional knowledge system must have been used while discussing cultural landscape. What is traditional knowledge system? All these houses had traditions. Like, for example, we used to paint house before Diwali, in old days with lime wash. So was that a fashion? No, that was not a fashion. That was a tradition that became a tradition to combat or to address the issue of hygiene, because after rainy season there could be germs in the atmosphere or on the walls. So lime wash is applied, which will kill those germs, and that became a tradition. So we have to understand how people have developed those traditions, because those traditions respected nature and they tried to be in harmony with nature. The whole concept of cultural landscape is about the same. After understanding this, what we will do when we are going to have new design, whether it is a single building in the settlement or whether it is about designing a new settlement, we need to have climate and culture responsive design. Because in past, after earthquake or tsunami, there were rehabilitation schemes for those villages. And what has been noticed that there were a few villages which were redesigned, sitting in the offices using grid iron pattern. What is grid iron pattern? You have roads which are perpendicular to each other, and those were implemented, and the responses from the inhabitants of those villages where this is not our village. For us, our comfort was important. We used to have places where we could gather in the afternoon. The ladies would gather and they will do chit chatting. And those places are not there in the newly designed villages. So those village plans actually failed. Those people went back to their original villages or the settlements. Whereas there are certain settlements where before planning or before designing, the designer tried to understand what is the culture of the settlement, how it functioned as a settlement, and they tried to have new settlements on the basis of principles used in the old settlements. And those settlements are thriving today. So we have to learn our lesson. So when we are gathering this information for documentation, what are the things that we should keep in mind, that when we are documenting, as I pointed out, that everything from past doesn't become heritage. So it needs to have some kind of significance or importance. So you will document something that is important to you. You feel it is important for the community or the mankind. Then when you are doing it, the documentation should demonstrate, should have quality work and accuracy. When you are documenting it, it should not be kept in the form of a report which is locked inside a cupboard. That should be made accessible to those whom it will benefit. So who are the people who will get the benefit? Those for whom it will be built. And there should be clarity in what to document. So documentation is also done in stages. There are these three stages identified. One is background research. Our activity at present is considered to be part of background research. So you try to get information about the settlement that you want to study from different sources. You will try to go through the books, you will try to interact with the experts, and before going on site, you will get fair enough idea about the settlements that you want to study. Then you will do the field studies. Field studies is where you will be actually visiting the site or settlement, and then you will try to compile or gather information about the settlements. But your documentation doesn't end here. Your documentation ends with the dissemination, where you compile the whole data, you analyze it, you learn your lessons, and you apply those lessons when you are given a chance to do that. So that is why we do documentation. Now, as I mentioned in the earlier slide, what are we trying to look at? We are trying to look at response to natural setting. Now, this is a plan of or map of Malcolmpet, which is Mahabaleshwar Bazaar, colonial Mahabaleshwar. And what you can see here, this is a typical plan of any colonial hill station or hill station that has come up during colonial time. You can see that there is a straight road, and I have shown two yellow circles at the end. Now these circles are kind of monuments. On one side, you will most of the time you will have a church building. On the other side, you will have a kind of public building, and there would be a bazaar in between. And what you see, there is a small old map shown here where I have shown one arrow which is pointing up, and the same thing is shown in on a small scale. So when you see this map, you understand that the houses along the bazaars, they are planned in a particular direction. Now that direction coincides with the slope. Now why is this needed? Because this falls under heavy rainfall area, so they have to cater to the rainwater disposal. So you find there are small lanes between adjoining housing blocks or building blocks. So this is how, and of course, when we look at the functional part of it, it is kind of a bazaar that served British officers who stayed there. So how it is tied up, you go to Shimla, you go to any hill station, you are going to see a pattern like this, because these are located along hill ridges. They used ridge to bind or to have this kind of settlement. This is another settlement near Aurangabad. This is called Kagzipura. And as the term suggests, Kagzipura means a settlement where a community called Kagzis resided. Now, who were Kagzis? Those who manufactured paper. How has this happened? When the Tughlaqs shifted their capital from Delhi to Aurangabad, Daulatabad, they needed these Kagzis to manufacture paper so that they can, write orders, or, they can keep records. Now, if you look at kagaz or, paper as a commodity, what is needed for that? We are talking about traditional paper making industry, which is today, you might be knowing it as handmade paper. So they used grass, they needed water, and you see that the whole community or the whole settlement has come up near the traditional water source. They didn't have pumping system, they didn't have mechanical means of getting water. So how they chose location of the settlements, it depended on the commodity that they needed or the resources that they needed for their livelihood the most. If you look at the plan of this settlement, you can see that the houses of those who manufacture paper is along the or is near the water source. But those who are involved in administrative work, they are placed near the road, which you can see, which is passing from the upper left corner. So that is a road that leads from Aurangabad to Daulatabad. So they are near the main road, which is a historic road, because the administrative people were they needed fast means of communication, and that is how they chose that area for their residence. And together, this acts like one settlement. When we talk about another important purpose of documentation, I said is when you get chance to design newly, it should be in harmony with what you are designing, wherever you are designing. So, this is an example where you can see that ugly building on the right hand side, which is like, it's an eyesore. It's not visually appealing, as well as it is not in harmony with what exists there. So if you have to do this, if you want to plan this in harmony with what exists there, you have to understand first what exists there, where the soul of the thing lies. Here are two examples again, temple building activity. Of course, they are built in different regions, but if you look at the vocabulary, there is one temple at the left corner, top left corner, and you see that it's a very kind of average kind of temple. You don't get that feel of serenity. Why we visit temple? Because we feel serene in the environment of temple. Now that serenity comes in the way things are planned, the way materials are used, and we have got another temple at the right bottom corner, which is designed in Goa, which is also a new temple. But you can see how this is designed. It doesn't look like out of place in Goa, because the designer has tried to understand how earlier temples were designed, how it is addressing climate. Again, it is hot, humid climate with heavy rainfall. So you can see those large overhangs. Then you can see even the verandas or the porch is enclosed. And you can see there is a lot of the local stone is used. And I'm not showing you the interiors, but a lot of woodwork is there, which is easily available. And there are communities who are involved in doing this today. So what appeals to us is the temple that is designed catering to the surrounding context. So when we want to document, when we try to understand the settlement and document for this understanding, what is it that we need to look at? For settlement, it would be how a settlement is functioning as a settlement. So how build spaces are designed, or where are they? What is the relation of build spaces with the open spaces? How the infrastructure, especially, they didn't have electricity, they didn't have those mechanical means available for water management, or so how, or waste management. So how were they doing this, and what is the interrelation of all these things? This is what you are going to look at when you will visit site. And how do you do that? You may map those things on site using different colors. You may do photo documentation, you may do video shooting, and then when you are looking at build spaces, you will try to identify where the residential zone is located. In pre-modern settlements, we don't come across totally commercial area, like where only shops are located. It usually used to be mixed, type of mixed in the sense people used to reside in the same place and they used to carry out their activities in the same premises. So you will have residential as well as commercial activity located in the same building or in the same area. Then religion, where are the religious buildings located? Where are the public areas, either in the form of open spaces or in the form of public buildings? This you will try to locate on a map using different colors. So when you will visit site, what are you trying to look at? Now here is one village where you can see now this is a place, it is called park, you know. So at the bottom of the tree, you will have a kind of platform which is used for interaction where the whole village will gather on particular occasions. Then there would be a central open space where you will get a temple. You can see a temple in the photograph as well. And there will be a huge open space where the whole village or the whole town will come together for celebrations or for any kind of activities. So what kind of open spaces are there? And it is a very unique thing in Indian context that the same space appears different and it is used in a different way at different period in the day of the day. So in the morning, this could be a bazaar. In the afternoon, this could be a kind of open space where neighbors will come do chit chatting. In the evening, it could be a hustling, bustling place where a lot of activities will take place. So try to look for that. Try to look for how individual buildings are planned and how they are put in group. As you can see in this particular photograph, there is a individual open space. They don't need gated communities. The concept of gate or how they have demarcated their plot areas. What are the materials they are using? How they are doing joinery? This is also timber joinery, but done in a very crude way. So try to look for that. Then are there gender-based spaces? Now water management system forms a very important aspect of traditional settlement. Here is one tank and you can see that though the tank is one, you can see different divisions in the tank. Why these divisions are needed? Are those divisions meant for gender separation? Are those meant for different types of use? What is it that it is catering to? Look for these. Look for how the corners, in the right hand photograph, you can see that the corner, how it is shaped so that it will not cause injury to anybody passing nearby, the corners, sharp corners. Look at the materials. Look at how building construction happened. Today we are talking about having earthquake resistance construction. Is it a new concept? No. Our ancestors have already done that. They have used it. And that has got reflected when any disaster has struck. Like for example, in Jammu and Kashmir, when the earthquake happened, the record showed that those traditional houses suffered lesser damages than the newer construction. So there are things we need to learn from what our ancestors have done. So how do we document and what do we document on site? For a structure, you will try to have where it is located, how the planning is done, what are the materials used, are there any interesting features? There used to be fountains in the houses. So, on how these fountains must have been working, how services were taken care of, are there changes or transformation that had happened? And how do you do that? If you try to organize this information in a small kind of form, it is called inventory. At the back of inventory filling sketches, major drawing, you can see a very broad way of organizing this. This is a kind of questionnaire, or this is a kind of form you will be filling on site, which is called inventory. The next two speakers are going to talk about that in detail. So, and how do you try to document it? You may try to document it by inventory filling, by drawing sketches, by doing measure drawings, by photos, by video documentation. But again, this is something about tangible heritage. You will also need to know about intangible aspects. Now, intangible aspects are constituted by users. So there also you will interact with users and you will try to understand their perception of what are they comfortable with, what are the things that they are not liking. Try to understand that too with the help of inventories. So we are going to heavily rely on manual kind of site documentation where you will be using tapes, distrometers. It is a better way to carry a graph book and you may draw proportionate sketches while you are documenting that, which is then you may come back and you may refine whatever you are documenting. But these are kind of manual way of doing documentation. As I told you, when you are trying to understand settlement, your documentation will be done at two levels. One is at settlement level, another is at the building level. So you will also need to carry maps. If the maps are not available, you may prepare a map after you visit the site and then use different colors to denote different areas on the site itself. Then, though we will be doing manual documentation, you should be aware of the technology that is being used in documentation of structures today. Distrometers, probably you will be carrying distrometers. They measure distances. Now there are distrometers that can actually rectify your, when you are standing at one place and if you have to measure the spire of a temple, there is an angle involved. So there are distrometers available which will calibrate those angles and will give you the distances or the measurements. Of course, drones are being used for documentation today. Laser scanning is a very latest technology that is being used for documentation. Of course, this is a costly affair, so not that everybody can use it, but eventually we will be using laser scanning for documentation as well. There are ground penetrating radars. Now, when you visit any historic premises, a lot of things may be excavated. There is a probability of something lying beneath the ground. And how do you know about this? So there are these ground penetrating radars. So technology is emerging, and once you gather all this, it is like solving a jigsaw puzzle. You will be working in groups because settlement has a scale and one person really cannot do the whole thing individually. So you distribute the work, then you come back and you try to make sense of whatever you have gathered. I will show you here, after doing this Kagzipura study, we realized that because they were involved in making papers, there is a different type of houses got developed. These are like, workshop places with residences. But today, you don't get to see those structures standing there. But when we did our archival research, that is, before field work, then we did field work, and then we could reconstruct how their houses could have been in the past. So your documentation should end with compilation and analysis that you can use in further application. So this is all about documentation. I tried to address few relevant points which I thought should be needed for second year level of DR, since your journey is new in architecture. Okay, thank you. Thank you for patiently listening. Over to you, Rama.
Yes, thank you so much, ma'am. Through your presentation, you shed light on notions of value, of heritage, meanings of identity, highlighted the need for documenting heritage in settlements, And with your patient guidance, you really simplified a complex area such as documentation and codified each and every aspect of how to observe and decode heritage with utmost clarity. And you made that simpler with relatable examples to make the topic more comprehensible. I'm sure that the students here have had a lot of food for thought, and they will use it effectively in the site study and documentation that is going to happen. Thank you so much, ma'am, again.
Thanks a lot. Questions we will be taking later, right?
Yes, we will be taking the questions later.
Okay. Fine.
So students can post their questions in the chat box and we will take them up at the end in the Q&A session. So I think now we can proceed to the next presentation. I now take pleasure in introducing the next speaker for the day, that architect Suranya Darshani. Suranya Darshani is a conservation architect, and her professional experience ranges from medieval forts, Dravidian temples to ecclesiastical buildings anchored in community development and the culture-nature approach. Apart from conservation and heritage management, she is also active in teaching, research, and heritage advocacy, including preparation of nomination dossiers for UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Her involvement with cultural landscapes have been diverse, from capacity building to community development to revival of cultural expressions in urban and non-urban areas. She is the national representative for EPWG ICOMOS India and the coordinator for the Emerging Professionals Mentorship Program. She is a member of ICOMOS International Scientific Committee, Cultural Landscapes and 20th Century Heritage. Architect Suranya will be speaking on the importance of inventories in documentation process. Over to you, Architect Suranya.
Thank you very much, Rama, for the kind introduction. I will just share my screen now. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, it is visible.
Okay, thank you. Hello and warm welcome to all the students over here. I first of all have to start off with saying that I'm quite jealous of the topic that you are going to be researching about, and that too as in field research. It's a very quite exciting topic to say the least. And within this, to discuss about or give an insight on why inventories are very important in a documentation process is something that we have to go from, to understand it from the basics. And this is quite a good segue in a sense that after Ms. Vaishali's presentation, where you have seen the processes and the various methods of documentation that is involved. But why do we do that is also kind of a question that, it involves a lot of thinking, and why within this profession, as we see, and you have heard a lot about, even ICOMOS from the members here right now. So within ICOMOS, as already mentioned, I'm leading the Emerging Professionals Working Group, and we have this wonderful group of professionals as you yourself. There are quite a few members who are students, and within this journey and within this group, we are exploring the different mediums of what is heritage, what within heritage is important. How do you help when you see that some structures are falling apart, and what as a professional who is emerging within this field, how do you perceive these things and what you can do for it? So we are right now in a world where it's a very globalized world, and we are quite together in a sense, but also as professionals within architecture, because within architecture there is always this sense of there is that architects generally go into very commercial architecture or into conservation or photography, journalism. So architecture gives you a lot to explore. In that sense, when we are talking about heritage is beyond us, beyond just this architecture field that we are within. And as students, for you, it's a wonderful opportunity to start off with, to understand the community, the places that you see beyond within this profession that you are part of, but that is what heritage is about. It belongs to all of us, and it is actually a duty for all of us to preserve it. Saying this, what is an inventory? You may ask, like, what do you find in an inventory, and how are you going to fill this inventory? An inventory, in the most simpler word, can be a list. It's a list of, questions, a list of just identification of various aspects that you want to list down about certain something that you are going to be documenting about. So basically, it is as you go and fill an application form, you write about yourself, your name, your surname, your family name, or the age, what is your profession. So it's quite similar. The application form that you fill in is about your personal information, and an inventory is quite similar to that, and it's about the heritage or the structure or the nature, or as we are doing here is the culture nature aspect together, the cultural landscape. So that is what an inventory is, and it's a very, very essential tool for heritage management, where both the protection and the preservation are key to how we preserve for posterity. Saying this, why an inventory is important. First of all, it is to the basic is to know your heritage. What is the identity of that heritage? Who, who is the custodian of this heritage? Is it like, there are different types of ownership that could be there with a house or institutional building, or it could be a water body, as Ms. Vaishali had shown us in the previous presentation. So we need to understand these custodianships also, because going forward, after you make this inventory, these are for right now, as you are making it for your college work, but it's going to become part of ECOMOS India also. And ECOMOS India being a larger body, an international body, this information will be available to everyone. So if tomorrow a researcher, a PhD student, or a professional who wants to work in Tillari would look into your information to understand, okay, this is the, this is what this structure is about, or this is what this settlement is about, is how this information will be gleaned from. And within heritage, we have a lot of notions about what type of heritage it is. Within that, we also have this concept of shared heritage. And shared heritage is a very vast topic. But for example, if I would say one example would be colonial heritage, which is something that, in the colonial past, we do share it with the Britishers or the Dutch, or, in that sense, it's kind of a shared heritage. So that is also something of a concept that emerges from, to when you look at an inventory, you get a sense of what this heritage is about. Inventories are quite important when you might be, since if you might be knowing about it, or you might be learning about it in future, is something called the heritage list. It is one of the things that began as already has been put across is after the World War, because during the World War, actually, there was quite a lot of theft of heritage items, you can say statues, and quite a lot of things were moved, the movable objects, the movable heritage objects were moved around. And to preserve and to protect, we had this organization called, as you know now, as UNESCO came about. And with that, you start is making a list. And this is something that is prevalent in any and every profession. You always make a list to know what is that you have already. And this kind of a list is very important when you come to heritage listing. So within India, the very first, you will say, the premier institution is the Archaeological Survey of India. And in Archaeological Survey of India, we have a list of sites which has already been listed as protected monuments. And then you have at state level, again, you have list of sites which are again protected, and that is under the state government. And then again, you come down to more local. You have one of the first cities in India to have a heritage list was Mumbai in 1994. So again, you have another list which is very local to the place and the city. Within all of this, one that kind of links the world is the UNESCO World Heritage List. And within the World Heritage List is one of your site, the Western Ghats is a inscribed site in that. And to understand that listing is also a process, and to make an inventory becomes part of this, that to protect the site and beyond protection, how do you conserve it? So this inventory that you will be preparing, and inventory generally gives these information which can be helped to manage and conserve these sites. So to conserve it for posterity, you have community. All this that we talk about as even professionals, and all this that has been made for this whole concept of UNESCO is for the community. And very recent, I would say, as you know, heritage is kind of also an evolving field for us. Also, modern science is not not something very centuries old. It's something that we are also learning and growing in that sense. So even within heritage, even though we have a vast, past, and a lot of understanding of what is ancient and what is the millennium old structures that are existing in the world, but for us, it's all about the community. UNESCO itself talks about community. In that way, now with the definitions, we have one new definition is the indigenous people. This year within UNESCO World Heritage, they have this operational guidelines how to list the site, and they talk about indigenous people. For us, within our country who have a colonial past, we do not actually talk about in that sense because we all are indigenous. The people of this country are indigenous to this land. So it's a very different concept, and that is where I mean, the whole idea about community, who are the right holders. That's another word that is something that is also emerging, and that is very focused to the community. The right holders are the people who the site belongs to, who what you the concept of conservation, what you preserve, it is actually for these right holders. Along with this, the right holders, as we see our site as a cultural landscape, it's with the environment. And this community belongs to the environment, and the environment belongs to them. And it's the togetherness, the identity of, the cohesive part of that aspect is what is very important to understand here. To manage why inventory helps is to also manage heritage. You have a list. Now you have listed your site as a heritage, but what is the next step? It doesn't end there. Once you list a site, it becomes a heritage site. It could be, there are different gradings that are available on the on the local level, but as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, you have a management plan within it. Only when you have a management plan, your site could also be inscribed, because there you see that it doesn't end there. It's a long journey. It doesn't end at just being becoming a World Heritage Site, but how you're going to make this World Heritage Site be part of your community, and how in terms of development, we are now celebrating the 75th year of independence of India. And we are at the stage where there is a lot of development that is happening within our country. This is something that most of the European countries have already faced post World War, where there was, or maybe even during the 2000 when the millennium came, a lot of a burst of development had started. And we are similarly facing that right now. So to understand development with your past, with your historic structure, these kind of inventories help to make understand who are the right holders. what type of heritage is this structure, what type of material is being used. So in a way, it helps for you to, progress towards the development, going hand in hand with the past. And it also is part of the security. When I say security, is also for the right holders, but it's also for the site, because sometimes there are changes to the site which are maybe unintentional, could be accidental, or it could be intentional and it has harmed the site. But when you have an inventory, or you have some a documented proof of the site, you can always preserve it in a more informed way with this document. So it helps in managing your heritage in that sense. And the last one is kind of very important, and actually something I would advocate for all of you, because you are actually stepping into this profession right now, and we have seen the wreck the pandemic has created, and you might have been seeing a lot of emerging issues that is being talked about in the whole global political scenario. So how from heritage we also learn solutions to sustainability and long-term existence of our species itself, that we can learn from the past. So that is something very important. And as an exercise also, I would say that this is more beyond the classroom exercise, but it's something that you are actually doing for the community and for the future, where this will help a lot of people. The last is why, actually UNESCO talks about preparation of inventories as a peacetime safeguarding measure, because you might have seen in Syria and quite a lot of places after the bombing, the structures that have been gone, they had been digitally archived. The past is gone, but for future, it has been preserved in some way or the other. So it is a tool where it helps in preserving parts of your heritage that can be there for eternity. This is an image that you would be very familiar with from 2019, the Notre Dame church in cathedral in Paris. When this happened, and the whole issue of reconstruction, conservation, and everything was talked about, one of the items that you should remember is this book. I'm sure you might have already been familiar to it, or will get familiar to it, is the Sir Bannister Fletcher's History of Architecture. It gives you a complete overview of the architectural history of the world, and it is a kind, in a way, it is also a piece of document that gives you a glimpse to the past. And the drawings from this cathedral, from the book, it's also one kind of an inventory which actually will be helping in its reconstruction and preservation in the future. Saying this, in the similar timeline, we have this also happening in the world. The wildfire that is being rampant quite around the world. But then this is also what you will be also looking to into the nature part. Now, how do you map this? Because this is something very perishable, it's gone, and how do you look at this aspect? As architects, we have always, learned from start from your cardinal points, which is the north, because we are very in tune to the geography and in tune to the climate around us, where the wind is blowing. These are aspects when you start off to design something from. So the nature aspect of it is also very vulnerable, and it's very important to make inventory so that we can preserve as much that is possible. This year, this was something the conference of parties, the COP26, which happened, was about the climate change, and within this, ICOMOS also was one of the participants in this overall discussion on climate change, because heritage is one of the most important aspects to learn from the past and find solutions of how to mitigate this. And this is what I want you to take with you when you're going to cite, is to we are, the human species, and we are at this junction of nature and culture. We are trying to learn, and we are working with both these diverse aspects as seen. But these are not diverse. It's actually one and the same, and it's quite together. And that is why this exercise, this Western Ghats, is actually inscribed as a natural site. And now, what is a natural site? You may ask, because within UNESCO also, as I say, heritage is an evolving concept. We might see quite a few changes maybe in the future, but as of today, heritage sites are inscribed as cultural sites, and then natural sites, and then as mixed sites, where sites have both the aspects of culture and nature. And then we also have in within cultural sites, we have this concept of cultural landscape. And 2021 is the year when the aspect of cultural landscape has been predominantly put into the operational guidelines, so that more these kind of sites are nominated, because there is a gap. We have been seeing, or the lens of heritage until now has been seeing it as culture sites and natural sites, but cultural landscape is something where you can look at both the aspects, but it's still under the table of culture. That's something to think about. So, Western Ghats is under the national natural site category as of right now, and there are criteria. There are criteria from 1 to 10. Something that I think you should look up is from UNESCO, is what are these criteria? Because if you go through these criteria, you will get an understanding of uh, how heritage is seen and how sites become inscribed. And it's not something that you have to reach to fifth year of architecture. I think it's something that you should be knowing about from now, and it's quite good to know also before going to site what does criteria 9 and 10 mean, so that you understand why this site has been inscribed under these two criteria. Also, within this whole aspect of the Western Ghats, you have the nomination dossier, which will give you a lot of information about it, that it's older than Himalayan mountain chain. It is very unique, and it is very important for actually the Indian monsoon weather patterns. Our weather pattern is actually dependent on these Western Ghats. If you do not have the Western Ghats, we might have totally very different monsoon patterns that we live through or we see right now. And it is also one of it touches upon the aspect of the early Jurassic period. The Gondwana land, as we know of about from history, and Western Ghats is that important for the even the global history of different periods. It's that important within the global history. So, saying this, you will see this line from UNESCO nomination operation guidelines from this year, is that cultural landscape is something that embraces the diversity of manifestation of the interaction between humankind and the natural environment. And this is the line which is actually very apt for the site that you're going to, because you will be seeing a lot of structures, settlements that have become part of the environment, the natural environment, and it is working. It is not working to some extent. This is where you will be going. You will be trying to understand what works, what doesn't work, and what solutions can be there in the future that can help the site to work. Or these are things that you can think about when you're going, because as students, I think you will be asking a lot of questions, but as students and as young professionals, you will also be bringing this very different perspective that I think we look forward to knowing about from you. What could be solutions, or what could be the ways that the interactions are seen between the humankind and the natural environment, and kind of sort of this small exercise if when you're just looking at this World Heritage aspect of the site that you are going to is under cultural landscape. There are three actually categories. One is intentionally designed landscape, organically evolved landscape, and associative cultural landscape. And I just want you to think about these three categories and wonder under which category, if this would have gone as a cultural landscape, inscribed as a cultural landscape, under which category it could have been inscribed. On site, as you would for an inventory, is that you observe first, you look at your site, you could be doing cognitive maps, or you could be scribbling about the site that you are looking at. And I'm aware that you have been divided into groups, so you already have a defined way of how you will be going about your exercise on site. But to work this is to first observe your environment, to look around, see where these houses are placed, how these houses are placed, and what are the familiar elements that you see. It could be from plants to trees to material, to the community way of living. But it's the first part is always to observe, to see, and to understand what you understand from what you're seeing. Then is to communicate. It is very important when you're going to a community where you are actually an outsider in a sense, and be respectful of that community, the language that you use, the questions that you use, and never be overbearing of what there is this in my experience till now, it's always this a point of contention where community can often feel that people, or may I say educated people, if they put it across, come and give too much of information or share their wisdom of about how to live, or how to lead a sustainable life, or teach them about things. Until and unless if somebody asks for information, or their interest comes to something they want to know from you, I think it's always there should be a communication way you are which is very respectful of what you are learning from them, because that is when you can understand or know more information from the community, and not alienate them from this whole uh, aspect. Because this exercise is yours, but it's also an exercise where you are doing it with the community. So it should be actually be kind of part of their way of seeing it also. So be open to that. Be open to communicate with people. Be open to understand how their social life is. What are the traditional practices? One very good example Ms. Vaishali had given is about the lime plastering thing, and that's a very common factor around our country during Diwali as the seasons change. You have this tradition of lime plastering, and that aspect is also changes region to region, where now you will be having Sankranti, and again during Sankranti is when some parts of our country, their monsoon is over, so they will be whitewashing their house. So this is something very, very traditional way of life that we have, but there are a lot more traditional practices that are part of our culture, and it should be seen in a way that where you will be learning about it, and you will be putting down into your inventory of what traditional practices that they are undertaking in their way of life. Evolutionary process is something that you should be understanding is when you are even looking at it. You will be there will be overload of information. First of all, it being a World Heritage site, and there is a lot of research that is already being done. But from your understanding of seeing things, of seeing a house, you can look at the material of the house and get an understanding. Because in some houses, as we know, we still do not have heritage funding for private houses. A lot of heritage houses, what they face is the dilemma of preserving their house within a certain budget or just bringing in new material. As you will see, a lot of corrugated sheet roofs that will be becoming part of houses which might have had mangrove tile roofs in the past. So these are things that you could also observe, from your own understanding. You really do not have to think that you are from just second year, but you are from second year, and that's an amazing thing, because you will be bringing a lot of energy, a lot of knowledge that is known to you, and that in that perspective also you can look at it, and then you will be having the wonderful teachers over you to guide you to process the information that you are seeing and the information that you're gathering. So be open to communicate in within your group, with the community, with your teachers. Ask questions, and the more you ask, the more you understand, the better this whole process will be. Material evidence could be something that you will be understanding from the materials, understanding names. This is something that I've been very much vocalizing, is to learn names in uh, the local language, because when we are going there, as we know Mangalore tiles, or we know IPS flooring, or we know certain items that we have learned from our college, or in a way it's in English, but go and be open to learn more. Now, since it's in Marathi, I think it would be wonderful. Learn these words and make a glossary of it for your understanding and for also the larger understanding, because we would love to have a glossary where we could know about these words which are being used by these local community people in their everyday language, and not something as IPS or something like, which might be alien to them. But there could be words, and there could be a lot of things. When now we are also touching upon the aspect of nature, there could be plants and trees around you which they would be knowing in a different non-biological species kind of a way, the nomenclature generally that is seen scientifically. But you can also look at, for example, tulsi, basil. These kind of words are something that you should list down, because you will be inventorizing and you will be keeping this information forever. So as much information that you can gather, please do. And also information, for example, trees and plants that you see. Once you have gathered this information, I would also suggest that please do cross check them again, because sometimes also a lot of information that when you're talking to community people, that they could be giving you a lot of information that that would be from their personal knowledge, and some information that you might come across that it's something that could be verified again. So please feel free to do that, also verify your information, and always keep this communication with your teachers, where the information that you're gathering, how do you verify, or how more you can understand about this. That could be part of this process. Planting patterns, as I showed you the picture of the wildfires. I think as you're going into this site, you should be more than aware of looking at the environment, the nature, what type of trees are there, the concept of sacred groves. Is it there in the Western Ghats? If it is there, then what are the indigenous plants, or what are the trees that are important to the community, and what is important to the environment? Most often you will see what is important to the community and environment is quite one and the same. So for you to understand these, this is also is very important, and only then you can start linking that aspect of not seeing culture and nature in silos, but together, how they work in a cultural landscape. Housing patterns, I think you have received a lot of information about this, how to look at the vernacular or traditional, or the kind of housing that you will be seeing within these settlements that you are going in Kudase. But it's from your perspective also to how you gather information and how you want to present this information is quite important. So learn, look around. My 3 things for you to making this inventory and why it's so important is to observe, communicate, and then analyze. And I think through this way, we will have a very richer document from you that we would love to see. With this, I thank you and thank you for your patience and attention.
Thank you so much, Architect Suranya, for that extremely articulate and informative presentation. Through your talk, you really broke down the aspects of an inventory right to the basics for the students and brought out the essence of the need for inventorying with complete lucidity. I hope your passion for the subject has transferred onto the students present here and that they will carry forth your valuable guidance in the documentation. Thank you so much. To again, inform the students that you can post your questions in the chat box. We will take them up at the end in a Q&A session. Do not miss this wonderful opportunity to get all your queries resolved from our experts who are here to guide you clearly and in the right direction. So the next speaker, the last speaker for today is Architect Ramya Gopalakrishnan, and she will be guiding the students about using inventories for meticulously documenting tangible and intangible heritage in the settlement study. Ramya Gopalakrishnan is a student pursuing her master's in conservation. She is also associated with SMEF's Brick School of Architecture since 2019. Her professional experience ranges from projects like mixed-use developments, military camps, hospitals, university projects, etc. Her keen interest in history and heritage encouraged her to get into the academia and actively and passionately pursue conservation. I now invite Architect Ramya to take us through the process of inventorying for the forthcoming settlement study. Over to you, Architect Ramya.
Yes, thank you, Rama. So I think by now, we have got a very in-depth idea of how we can proceed with the documentation and, when we go to the site. Vaishali ma'am has given very apt input on the step-by-step process that needs to be considered while doing this. And at the same time, Suranya ma'am has also given us the, told us, the importance of inventory and, why it needs to be done. So now I will be taking you through the inventory format that you will be using on site. So, make sure that you go through that well, so you understand what needs to be documented. Okay, so I'm going to present my screen now. Rama ma'am, could you please let me know if the screen is...
It is visible.
Okay. Yes. So this is the format that you are going to use, on site while as part of the documentation. Like ma'am suggested, inventory is going to be a part of it. You are going to be, mapping it, mapping the different sources or resources on your on a larger map. And you will also be detailing it out, individual structures and everything through sketches. So this is a part of the overall documentation you will be doing. So I'm going to just briefly go through the different points that need to be considered. So first, you are going to look at the name and the site and location. So there are 3 villages that you are going to look at. So depending on which, which village you're covering, your site and location is going to change. Then the type of structure, it could be a house, it could be a temple, it could be a public building which everybody uses, a community space. It could also be water tanks, like for example, ma'am was showing previously. And then the next thing that you will, so you are going to tell which one it is that you are documenting. And then the next thing is the owner of the site. Is it owned by the community? Maybe it is privately owned. It has a single ownership or multiple ownership. So this has to be filled here. And then the occupation and background of the owners. Then next, after that comes the significance of site. Here, coming to history first, who built the structure, any renovations, name of the person responsible. Here, I would like to take the example of a temple. Let's say it's, certain structures might have seen a lot of layers throughout, its the year. It might have evolved. So, initially maybe it was built by somebody, and later on maybe some renovation, some kind of additions might have been done by a different person. So those kind of things will come under this. Then nature culture association. So here you can talk about the kind of vegetation that you see there. So the names, the local names can be recorded here. So this, when Saili ma'am is giving you the presentation, she had spoke about, she had shown you some of these flora fauna that was, that is seen in this region. So that can be recorded. Then the topography of the region, if it's a flat land, is it rocky, are there contours to the site? Then if there is a nearby water body, and how the land is used. So for example, let's say that there is a weavers community, for example, in that region. And you might see that they are living maybe close to the water body, because some of the processes in the weaving itself requires water. So that is the kind of connection we are trying to bring here. Okay, so water body, how that land is being used, and what activities are taking place in that particular structure and its surroundings. And then the materials used for construction, if they are locally available, what are those? And uses of these spaces. So maybe in different seasons, they might use different areas. So that can be, that can come under this. Then natural medicine. So in these kind of regions, you might, they might be using natural medicine. And for that, the raw materials, the plants and things that goes into it might be coming specifically from that region itself. So that can be documented here. And then coming to the intangible. So the occupation that they are into, what are the kind of techniques they use, what is unique, which is unique to that particular occupation, be it a weaver or somebody who is into agriculture, they might have some specific practices that they follow, which can be put here. Then cuisines, what kind of food they eat, where do they get materials for that, what are the for their cooking. Then are there any specific or unique ingredient that they use? Then the next thing is rituals, the deities they believe in, and maybe for each deity there will be some specific ritual, some prayers or something that they follow on a daily basis. So that can be recorded here. And then birth and death rituals. So this also will be very specific to community. So that is a very important thing that can be added. Then folklore and mythology. So are there any stories attached to these structures or locations? So sometimes you might find, I'll just take an example. Maybe there is a house or a group of houses, and there is a tree under which maybe they are putting a lamp or diya every day. So there should be some kind of story attached to due to which that happens. So so you have to inquire about all these through your interview and fill this in. Then coming to, for the structure again, age and year of the construction, is it protected or unprotected? So sometimes it could be community who is protecting it, maybe it could be an individual who is in charge of that place, and how they are doing it and how they are using that space. Maybe it had a different kind of usage before, and now they might be using it in a different way. Or they are, the usage is still the same. Maybe it was a dwelling, a place where people stayed before, and still it is the same thing. Or maybe there were people living there before, and now it is used for a different function. Maybe it's a community space or a meeting space or something. So maybe the function has changed. So that is also something that can be added here. And sometimes you might also come across buildings which is not used, which is locked. It's not used at all. So that can be recorded. And then state of conservation. So state of conservation means how does that building look to you? So here your observation is very important. I mean, for all these questions, you have to really observe, talk to the people there. So here, for example, signs of deterioration. if there is any crack, any leakage on the, on the structure, if there is any discoloration, vegetation growth, such things needs to be observed, and it has to be documented. Then the next point is traditional conservation practices. So how do they protect their buildings? Even Saranya ma'am was, even Vaishali ma'am was talking about this actually. You might have seen during different seasons, they whitewash their houses. Maybe they add a fresh layer of cow dung on the floor. So these things are done to sort of maintain their buildings, right? So we have to see what are the things that they they do, the steps that they go through, and what are the materials they use in this also. So here I have put few, like for the facade. So what kind of treatment do they give on the facade? So that can, comes here. Then for the floors, like example, I gave cow dung, but maybe there is something else that they are practicing. So that will come here. Then for the roof, like for when there is rain, this area, region gets a lot of rain. So how do they maintain, prevent leakage and everything from the through the roof? So these things are important. Now coming to community, so you might come across various different communities with different jobs, different occupations, and the spatial requirement or the way their spaces are built will also differ based on the community. So you would be inquiring about the community, their job, what are the spaces they use. Then if they are into agriculture or an animal husbandry, then again they might have a different method of different practices that they follow to manage them. So that is coming under this. Then deities they believe in, and the religious calendar they follow. So even for all of us, like we follow different some different belief, we have different beliefs and we follow different practices. So sometimes we might have weekly rituals, something we follow, and maybe monthly once there might be a ritual wherein you will be going to the temple, things like that. So what are these things? That could be weekly, it could be monthly, it could be every day also. What are the what are the rituals that they follow on a every daily basis? So that will come under this. Then materials used for offerings. So while they are doing their puja, like there might be some instruments, equipments, some materials that they use to do this. So you can get a record of that as well. And here, try to make sure that you also get the local terms for this as well, because it is very important. We can translate what it is to English, of course, but when you are noting it down, also make sure that you are noting the local terms for all these. Then what kind of clothing do they wear? Then if they have any art and craft, specific to the community, what is that? And what materials do they use? And what is unique about that? Then the kind of language. Like if you remember, when we had Saili ma'am's presentation, she was talking about different dialects, that you may notice there. So this, so you can record that here. That is the first part where you're documenting all the history and all those things. And then next thing which we will be doing is coming to the architecture part of it. So that was the general aspects which we saw in the first part. The second part is going to be mapping the vernacular architecture. So here you can see the 3 different regions you'll be covering. So based on which area you're covering, you're going to mark that on the map. And then you are going to look at the spatial organization and features. So here you have to, do this through plans, elevation, some sketches, some views, which you will be doing on site. So what are the things you are going to consider while you do those sketches? So the first few points are things which will be, which are often missed. So I'm just saying that first. So like I mentioned previously, there might be different communities who are into different kind of occupation. So if there are animals and they are involved in animal husbandry, there's a different thing that they follow. And then where is the water? Like there could be a specific way of water storage. Then grain storage if they are into farming. Then segregation of spaces if there is any in their planning. Then spaces associated with jobs. So if they are into weaving or some kind of handicraft, they might have specific, the spaces might be planned in a way to accommodate these requirements as well. Then other services, there could be some traditional practices also when it comes to drainage, even a sewage system and things like that, how it is managed. So all this needs to be observed, and you can show that on your plans. And the general spatial arrangement with respect to cardinal directions, belief system. So there could be, you've heard of Vastu and things like that. So that is also very, like a prominent thing which you might see. So you have to also inquire about that. Okay, so that is the first part, which is with respect to spaces. Now coming to the description of the architectural elements. So again, I have given you points here. So what are the things that you will be looking at? So from bottom up, I'm taking plinth, walls, doors and windows, and if there is any other opening other than these, ventilation space could be there. What is the, then the roof structure, the type of material used, the roofing material, the flooring, material used for flooring, columns, staircase. If there are any architectural, character which is unique, maybe, based on the materials also, there will be a certain way it could be, used, because of which a certain kind of architecture might come. So these things will come in this area. Then again, courtyards, open spaces, if any. So all this needs to be documented. So again, going back to architect Surya Narayanan sir's presentations yesterday, as well as Bhagyashree ma'am's presentation also today, you might have, they had shown, Surya Narayanan sir's presentation showed some of the ways how you can show these through views, and elevations, and also that's a very good thing that you can take ahead. And even Bhagyashree ma'am also showed the way it could be represented, how you can represent your drawings in a very well explained, well structured way. So you can use those guidelines, to go about with these sketches. And the last point is threats to the site. So what do you mean by threats? So there are 4 points I have written here: natural, negligence, vandalism, and urban pressure. So natural could be, maybe from rains, floods, landslides. So from these things, there could be damage. So you have to identify if there is any of the, any threat posed by natural, occurrences. Then there is negligence. If it is locked, if people don't use the space, on a daily basis, things like that could also, damage the structure because of lack of maintenance. Then there is vandalism. So maybe scribbling, breaking of things, so that is by other people. So causing damage to a site. It is a humans causing damage to the site, and destruction caused due to that. So that is vandalism. And then urban pressures. So again here, maybe there is a new modern. So today Vaishali ma'am also showed an example where there was a very modern building, contemporary building standing next to a heritage building. So certain things like that, and even newer buildings coming on sites where heritage buildings used to stay at some point. Or you might see that there is a heritage building and there are some kind of construction activities happening around. So these are urban pressures that comes into such areas. So these things could be written down, and also photographs of these could be taken. So these are the different things that you need to consider. So this will be floated to you. So you will have this as your guideline. So the initial part you will be writing on the sheet, and the later part where the architectural elements and details come, you will be sketching, and photographs will be taken. So the different methods of documentation that was explained to you, you will be using all of that to make a very comprehensive source of data. Yes, that is all, Rama.
Thank you so much, Architect Ramya, for explaining every aspect of the inventory in so much detail with apt examples. I'm sure this input has brought a lot of clarity to the students, and it will immensely help them in the inventorying process on site. Thank you again. So with that, I think we can now open the floor for a brief Q&A session with our experts. I request students to put their questions if any more questions are there in the chat box. We have received a few questions already. So if Vaishali ma'am is here, present here, there is a question that I think would be apt for her to take. How can one go about the scientific documentation of mythological stories, since these are community-built stories? Ma'am, are you here? Okay, I think Vaishali ma'am is not here in the meeting. Is it?
Yes, Rama, I think she's not there in the meeting.
Okay, so is it possible for either Architect Suranya or Architect Ramya to take up this question? Architect Suranya, if...
Yes, I think it's a great question. And actually, this is something that, where, as I mentioned, you need to re-verify. Because as you know, legends are something, there will be quite a lot of stories that will be part of community. And from these information, you will have to go through maybe historical documents or talk to the community as whole, because quite often it is also happening now is that you hear a lot of folklores which you have never heard before, but now you have this whole concept of storytellers where it's not just for the community but even professionals, actually conservationists and preservationists, who are going to community to bring these stories to social media, to documentaries. So there are a lot of stories that which we have never heard about, and some are still, in a way, you can say, could be something that might need verification also, but it's something there that you can learn from also. And to verify more, your teachers are one of the first people when you are at site to know about it, and quite possibly you could find new folklores that could be helpful for the whole process.
Okay, thank you so much for taking that question. There is one more which, if you will be able to guide them, is that in case of certain art forms or intangible crafts, such as, artists or local musicians, how can one document and trace their histories in a correct or appropriate manner?
This is a good question. Actually, I will ask Niyati also to take over, because she's kind of an expert in this and she's doing a PhD on it. But this is again a question of, from the community itself. For example, churches. Let me give this example of churches. Like churches have this, they have a ledger of all the people who are part of a parish, or the certain celebrations that happen, and this is all documented in these ledgers of every year. And you can look up the people or these, as you were saying about intangible cultural heritage of performers, and this is something kind of a document. And this is quite possibly in a lot of community, they always have some piece of document or some way of documenting it, even through folklore, to pass on the information from generation to generation. So this could be certain ways to gather information for that. I think I will leave it to Niyati to take it forward.
Hi, sorry, can you repeat the question? I was just trying to sort out something.
So the question was that in case of intangible cultural heritage, like for instance, certain crafts or art forms, like artists or local musicians, how can one document and trace their histories in the correct manner? Like what is the apt way of going about this?
See, when we talk about intangible, like I think Suranya only mentioned earlier, in which we take that it is always by the community, and they are the main, caretakers of it. They are the people who are going to take it forward. So even when we talk about documentation of this, whether it is at UNESCO level or at otherwise, it's always the community who is put in the forefront. In fact, this is the place when the intangible came in, where community came into the foreground. Otherwise, it was always talking about from the experts' point of view. When we talk about monuments, it was always the experts. But this was the time when community got the recognition that, you know, this is, they are the main people who has to be taken forth. So there are certain formats which are used, but mainly the ways that actually go about is mainly narratives only, narratives from the people. And considering that intangible also has a part in continuity, because if you look at a building will stand and it will, okay, it will, you know, there'll be some problem with it. It will, you know, it will be destroyed to an extent, or it will can, you know, face some damages, but it will be there more or less, except there are many changes which are done to it over the years. But when you talk about intangible, it is always taken forth by, you know, generations to generations. So one generation teaches the other. In fact, in some of the some of these different places, you don't even have written records also of it. And so it is bound to change also a little. So there is no this thing that we can say that it's going to be the perfect, and there is no end to it, in the sense that, you know, or the start to it. So, and that is why even when we talk about authenticity, which I wouldn't go into for the students, but basically I'm just trying to say that जो सबसे perfect और या सबसे traditional क्या था, ऐसा कुछ नहीं होता. So when it comes to music or anything, I will never be able to tell you that, you know, this was the original part. So that original will never be there, because it will always be carried forward. So narratives will be one way of looking at it. And like Suranya said when she talked about the inventories, this is also why we use inventories, because today I see a certain craft which is there. Tomorrow it might not be there. I see certain music which will be there. Tomorrow it will be totally changed, or it will be in some other form. So if I am able to, you know, document it today, put it into some kind of inventories or in any other part or kind of documentation, it will be there for posterity, for others to see कि ये starting में कैसा था, या at least इस level पर कैसा था, because there was nothing to say कि ये first वो था. जो music में भी कह रहे हैं ना, पहला घराना, second घराना, उसके बाद so, पर उसका भी कोई वो नहीं है कि पता नहीं कहाँ एकदम उसका beginning point था. So it does continue, and it's always good to take it in the reference of the present, but with narratives, by talking to people of पहले जो उनको पर याद है वो कितना था, and then what is it at this you know, level or at this stage in the contemporary context. So for, I think, the students of second year, that would be a good you know, way to go forward to talk to the community around, the people who are actually doing it, practicing it in a way. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
I answered my question. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, you answered it with perfect clarity. I'm sure the students have some way forward with respect to this. And I think there is one more question that we can take. Architect Suranya, if you can take this one, is how does an inventory and the process of designing inventories change according to context? And what is the right way of going about this?
First of all, there is no right way, but there is just the appropriate way to go about it. Because, for example, this inventory itself, we have done a lot of back and forth with Ramya, Vaishali. We have had quite a lot of discussions because, let me put it across, there is no inventory of such for culture, nature, or cultural landscape as of right now. So what we are also attempting is a one of a kind and a very first time attempt. And, you know, the students are going to be the one who we want to, you know, get to know from also, a feedback. If did this inventory, you know, work, you know, it's not that always all inventories work, or every time there is some additional information, and that's why you have annexures to add to. But this inventory also, when we started off, was to, there is this general notion of heritage seen primarily as very monumental. When we look at vernacular heritage or architecture also, we are still in our country, we do not have heritage listings for non-rural or very small historic villages. And that is why where, you know, this whole the Scientific Committee of Heritage, Historic Towns and Villages has been the organizer for this event, because we still do not have such kind of a thing. And this is all very much evolving. So while making inventory, as I mentioned, it's like your personal information document. You are making this document of a object, of a structure, and getting an understanding of this, and then making this inventory as part of a record. It's going to be part of this record, and it's going to be part of BRICS and ECOMOS India, where later further people could also add to it. And as we were also discussing about, intangible cultural heritage, or even just our cultural heritage, if somebody wants to attempt to know more about it, or who's going to take it forward, because in 10 years there might be certain changes that might happen, and that person can look at this inventory and get an understanding how much the architectural fabric has evolved, what kind of trees have changed, and why, if there is a difference in rainfall pattern, was it because of the trees or the way the usage has changed? And that is why these inventories become very important. So the first question is, why do you want to make the inventory? And here for this exercise, it was that we want to analyze the culture nature aspect of this World Heritage Site. We want to look at it in certain way, and we want to learn from it. So that is why we prepared this inventory as it is right now. And eventually we would love to have a feedback from the students to know what worked for them, and maybe something more could be added in the future. And also, I would also welcome the students to add more notes. If they feel that certain questions are not given, but they have received some information or something that they feel is very useful for the inventory, they should add it. They should add or make notes in the inventory, so that it becomes part of the inventory itself. And also, when you're making an observation, please do add, like sometimes the question could be something, for example, the state of conservation is that it's good, poor, or somewhere in between, or very bad. So when you're focusing or adding this information to the inventory, you can make notes also within that. Why is it bad, or what is the aspect that from your personal observation has you reached to this conclusion? These could also be very helpful, and these information could also be part of the inventory, the personal notes from the person who is taking the inventory, because later in future when someone reads about it, they also get it's kind of a more informative knowledge that they receive from learning from someone's personal perception, why they reached this knowledge or this answer that they have provided. So I think there is just appropriate way that you can build an inventory, and not just the right ways that you can go about.
Right. Thank you so much, Architect Suranya, for bringing such clarity to this point of appropriate ways, and there being no right way as such. I'm sure the students will imbibe this, and I'm sure all of you will be there to guide them through the process. And I think with that, we can come to a conclusion of this really enriching series of talks. And I'm sure the students have taken a lot of food for thought with them to take ahead for the settlement study. So with that, I now request Architect Poonam Trambadia to take over and give us a brief summary of whatever that we have gone through in these past few days with the lectures that we have had. Over to you, Architect Poonam.
Thank you, Ramya. Invigorating sessions, and only two things can happen with this. Either you are teeming with knowledge and very energized to work, or your minds have zoned out and you need to process the data. So I very, very quickly sum up, give a summary so that we have in concise the knowledge which we have gained in these days. The session started on the very first day with Mr. Raman and Mr. Girish providing and setting a nice setting and context for these studies with the understanding of their natural heritage and the understanding of the Western Ghats. This was followed by these 2 rigorous day sessions, both offline and online. Offline taken by Miss Vaishali Palinde. I hope I am speaking the names correctly, but apologize if there is a difference. She took an understanding of the communities and their traditions and the surrounded by nature over the centuries in Konkan region, and this was supported by Vaidehi Lavan with her focus on vernacular architecture, which evolved around the regions through its geometry, climate, and people and their occupational responses. This was enriched on the second day of the online sessions by landscape architect Bhagyashree Bedkar, who presented and interacted with the students upon various methods of geographical representations, how to take dimensions on site and graphically represent them. The online sessions were taken by architect Surya Murthy and architect Onkar on the Saturday. On the first day, architect Surya Murthy went through this whole understanding of nature, culture, vernacular, landscape, and documentary and inventorying on how these settlements can be seen as a complementing component of each other rather than seeing them in silos. So it gave us an understanding of how to holistically look at an area or a settlement, bridging the gap between built and nature. And Onkar gave us a beautiful understanding of the site of Tillari, which you guys will be mapping with a detailed understanding of the landscape, the nature, the areas of overlap between man, nature, and architecture. Today, architect Vaishali, going through these 2 days of early sessions was quite overwhelming for me also, and realizing that you are a young set of students, I'm sure it was overwhelming for you also. And thanks to architect Vaishali today, who brought down this understanding of and simplifying it for you with an understanding of various levels of heritage, what heritage is, how it can be seen in various dimensions, bringing the understanding of heritage from time-based monumental understanding to a very value-based system of understanding architecture, where not only monuments which are in the past, but architectural innovations or understanding or methods can also be considered as heritage, both tangible and intangible. Further enriched by the understanding of inventory, or importance of inventory, and what would be the components of inventory, which you will be looking into the various aspects, what you should be looking, what should not be missed, and how it should be looked at, getting covered by architects Suranya and Ramya. So thank you everybody, and I hope this helps all the students do something which is which complements nature, culture, and heritage. So all the very best, and I hope you are ready and enthusiastically wanting to go on your site. So best of luck.
Thank you so much, Architect Poonam, for that very comprehensive summary and your words of encouragement. And yeah, so now I invite Dr. Vaidehi Lavan to offer a vote of thanks. Over to you, Dr. Vaidehi.
Thanks a lot, Rama. Very well said by all the speakers, and thanks to Poonam as well for summing up the overall sessions happened offline and online. It's very essential at this stage to thank to all those supported us at every stage. I take this opportunity to present my vote of thanks and express gratitude towards all the experts and coordinators who made this crucial segment of the ECOMOS training activity successful. My heartfelt thanks to ECOMOS President, Architect Naveen Piplani sir, and ECOMOS Secretary, Architect Shalini Dasgupta ma'am, for accepting and taking forward this collaboration with BRIC. Thanks to ECOMOS, NSCS, HCTV and West Zone coordinators, Architect Niyati Jigyasu and Architect Poonam Trambadia, for their constant encouragement and meticulous comments at all levels towards improving the proposal for the activity. I thank all the experts who supported the activity, especially Surya sir, coordinator of ECOMOS South Zone and co-coordinator of NHC Cultural Landscape, Suranya, representative of EPWG, coordinator NHC training, Dr. Vaishali Latkar, for supporting the activity. This was an insightful and enriching experience for all of us. Thanks to Vice President Reema Huja ma'am and Treasurer Priyanka Singh, all the zonal representatives who supported this activity. Thanks to Karan Singh and Lipika for all kinds of technical and administrative support from ECOMOS front. Without the unconditional support from our pillars, Director Ms. Pooja Misal, our Principal Dr. Purva Keskar, and our Academic Coordinator Architect Manali Deshmukh, this collaboration wouldn't have been possible. They are always encouraging towards new ideas and support all collaborations that aid in the growth of the institution and holistic development of the students and faculty. A big thank you to Ramya, Saili, Vinita, Omkar for developing ideas for the activity proposal. Thanks to Girija, Rama, Bhagyashri for supporting at all levels for making all the online and offline sessions possible. Thanks to all the speakers who have joined outside ECOMOS and outside BRIC as well, especially Girish Punjabi, Raman Kulkarni and Saili Palande Datar. All the speakers, experts, very insightful sessions and lot of takeaways. At the end, thanks to all the students for their excellent response. I know being second year students, a lot of new concepts they came across. They heard many experts. And at the moment, we have more than 70 students who joined the activity with great enthusiasm. We all will be setting off for fieldwork tomorrow and will be on site for a few days, immersing in heritage, culture, and biodiversity. With all the insights gathered through the seminar series, the students are equipped now to conduct the study in an informed manner. Thank you all once again for joining in. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Vaidehi. I think with that, we can wrap up the lecture series that has been a very apt precursor for the settlement study. And I hope that the settlement study that is forthcoming is very successful with the help of this precursor that we had. So thank you all once again and good night.